Here at Funko, we're going to do cartoons for men! And here, the head of our manly cartoon department is Stacy.
On September 21st, 1992, Nick fired John Kay and Spumco from the Ren and Stimpy show. That same day, he told his crew the decision. At this time, Vincent Waller was still in Korea working on Big Baby Scam and The Great Outdoors. Quote, Greg Vanzo walked in and asked if I had heard anything about Spumco being removed from the show. I said I hadn't. Greg said, hoping for the best, "Oh well, it must be nothing then." I just looked at him and said, "Greg, if you heard something all the way in Korea, it's based on something." I finished my scenes, went back to my hotel, and made a call, at which time they told me that we had indeed been separated from the show. Nick had planned to fire Chris Felucci for a while, and had even set up new animation studio Games Animation in August of that year, and started speaking to Camp about running the show. Recently married and with a kid on the way, he agreed. Tensions between John and Camp had started rising, and at one point there was talk about a Ren and Stimpy movie being made, to which John constantly changed his mind on, but Bob agreed to, making matters worse. To take Chris Felucci and Spumco from the project was a risky move, and John had already compared works of his finished by other artists as, quote, giving an unedited cartoon to the milkman and having him finish it for you. Coffey called firing John, quote, the most painful thing of my career. Frankly, we would have done almost anything to make that relationship work. He was on a path, and it wasn't the same path as Nickelodeon. Spumco was then split into two parties, those who wanted to continue doing the show and those who wanted to stay loyal to John's vision. Producer Libby Simon said, quote, we really grew close, and we felt a real bond, and loved what he was doing, and just stood by him. It was really heart-wrenching to have to stop doing the show, and the friendships that were lost. It was just a horrible experience altogether, and I'm still not over it. John said, quote, it turned out they weren't friends. They just used the situation. They just bided their time and waited for an opportunity to make as much money as possible and sell everybody out. John began to vent his frustration on the rest of the crew in an effort to get them to leave Nick as a form of leverage. Billy West was screamed at via phone calls in hopes that he would, quote, quit so that he would be called back to the show. This guy was using me to fight his battles, and that is not a man. Gary Owens was also contacted. West said, quote, I got this call from Gary. He was a little spooked. Did you get a call from that Chris Felucci fellow? I answered the phone, and it was someone in mid-sentence screaming. He said, you're rich. You don't need the fucking money. Are you still doing the show? Word of John's firing spread fast and wide. A mere 2 days afterwards, before Nick had even issued a statement, The Hollywood Reporter told the situation, and USA Today reported it 1 day later. Others stood in solidarity with John, including Simpsons creator Matt Groening and even Ralph Bakshi. At the time of John's firing, about 19 cartoons were in various stages of writing, many of which would be used by games later. About a week or so later, Ren and Stimpy Exposed was released. The magazine played down many of the tensions behind the scenes and actually delivered an outright sunny outlook. At the same time, Nick offered John be creative consultant, which he refused. Quote, I had to go home and shower about 50 times after all that. I just felt like I was covered in filth. After his firing, John was still given director's credit on cartoons he was no longer involved with, and reports were that he received $25,000 to $30,000 for each episode aired, but those numbers could be easily made up as Vanessa Coffey won't quote a figure. As September ended, all work was taken from Spumco. Roy Smith said, quote, I had to go in by myself with the truck and a couple of hired guys and go in and cart the show out. And John was following me around the studio as I was picking up all the work, calling me every name in the book. A couple weeks into Game's lifespan, Roy was rewarded for his loyalty. he was fired. In early October, Camp spoke to John in his office and told him that Nick would be continuing the show with him in charge. Understanding at this point that the show was out of his control and not wanting to hurt Bob's career, he gave him the okay. John said, quote, "I fucked up. Don't worry about it. No hard feelings, man." The two shook hands and left on good terms. At this time, Eddie Fitzgerald and Mike Fontanelli then took up signatures to send to Nick stating that they would under no circumstances work on the show without John. When Bob saw this, he said, quote, "What are you guys doing? Stop it or you'll ruin everything." Eddie and Mike would have none of it and warned Bob of the ripple effects it would have on both the fan base of the show and animation in general. When Camp tried to shake Fitzgerald's hand, Eddie refused. The next day, Camp returned destined to ease any tensions with other artists. Some shook his hand out of pity, but Eddie once again refused. Bob then consulted John. Quote, "Eddie and Mike hate me, John. You've got to talk to them." John suggested maybe he shouldn't visit Spumco in the last remaining days. Nick refused to talk about the subject in the press, but yet Spumco was incredibly willing to talk. Vincent Waller even attacked his high school friend Bob Camp in an LA Times newsletter. Quote, "He took his screaming tirades and wall-kicking abilities with him. He will be missed." In October of '92, Games received death threats more than once. At this time, the network tried animating other scenes to Man's Best Friend, and only after thousands of dollars later realized that they could not finish the cartoon because John owned the rights to George Liquor. On November 7th, Sven Hoek aired. In the episode, Ren's cousin Sven comes to visit him. When Sven arrives, he delivers the "He is all you are, Sven" line taken from an episode of The Flintstones that Chris Felucci would quote in his childhood. Once he sees Sven is just as much of an idiot as Stimpy, Ren reaches a breaking point. He breaks down and threatens the two with many promises of bodily harm. One example, with Ren saying he would, quote, "gouge their eyes out," referencing Jeffrey Dahmer, was removed, as was Stimpy and Sven's extended litter box scene. November 21st, Haunted House and Mad Dog Hoek were aired. Haunted House was a leftover Tiny Toons episode that was canceled after the storyboard phase. The shower scene was also made black and white after the fact, much to John's disapproval. The rant at the end of Mad Dog Hoek was an actual letter Spumco got. December, Marvel Comics releases the first issue of the Ren and Stimpy comic. That same month, Film Threat publishes issue 7, in which it reveals John is already shopping new projects, and that The Ripping Friends was considered for a motion picture by Disney-owned company Hollywood Pictures. They loved his ideas, but turned down the project regardless. Quote, "It's a really ambitious project, and I'm afraid of that because I know I'm going to be battling with studio executives." December 12th, Big Baby Scam and Dog Show aired. In Big Baby Scam, Old Man Hunger shares a bath with the duo, and was supposed to hum a happy tune, but Nick had him whistle "In the Hall of the Mountain King," referencing pedastry like in Fritz Lang's M. John said, quote, "Sometimes they read more into a joke than I intended." Waller said, quote, "I don't do pedophile or homosexual jokes, but they think I do." The 31st, Ren and Stimpy's Space Cadet Adventures for the Nintendo Game Boy was released. January 14th, Son of Stimpy aired on MTV instead of Nick because of the network's apprehension. John said, quote, "It is hard to distance myself while they are still airing episodes that I killed myself on." February 4th, on The Simpsons episode Brother from the Same Planet, Bart watches Ren and Stimpy. This sequence was laid out by Chris Riccardi. February 13th, Monkey See, Monkey Don't aired. When this cartoon was aired, the original, created by John Kay, title disappeared. February 27th, Fake Dad aired. This episode was originally lengthened, but brought down due to games. Jim Smith said it was, quote, "taken over by uncaring people who shoved it through." March 13th, the Ren and Stimpy show Buckaroos was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and Super Nintendo. March 27th, The Great Outdoors aired. April 3rd, The Cat That Laid the Golden Hairball aired. This story was based off of a fan idea. April 15th, The Simpsons aired The Front, which featured a jab at the show. While attending an awards ceremony, a clip for Ren and Stimpy is just presented as a black screen with "Clip Not Done Yet" written on it. April 24th, Stimpy's Fan Club airs. This is the last lines that Chris Felucci delivers as Ren, done during his freak-out moment. That same month, Bill Ray raises tensions by doing the cover to Ren and Stimpy number 5, specifically disobeying John's wishes, and appears in Comics Interview issue number 122, where his comments were later attacked by other members of Spumco. 3 issues later, Jim Smith wrote the magazine as a way to set the story straight. May 8th, A Visit to Anthony airs. John said, quote, "I made a cartoon once based on the first fan letter we got for Ren and Stimpy. It was from a kid named Anthony, so I featured my dad in the cartoon playing Anthony's father. I used scenes and images that were etched in my brain from being reared by a man who believed in rules and discipline. This is how I saw him when I came home from school one day, all happy, whistling a Frank Sinatra tune, and ready to watch the after-school cartoons on TV. He heard me come in the door and slowly, ominously turned around. He shoved the paper in my face and blurted, 'Your hero's dead!' The headline said in huge letters, 'Walt Disney, beloved teller of fables, dead at 66. I went into shock. Then Dad took the opportunity to launch into one of his favorite lectures. 'Now maybe you can put away all your little kiddie cartoons and fantasies about being a big-shot Hollywood cartoonist. Start thinking about getting serious about your future!' Anyway, all these scenes that I actually witnessed growing up ended up in A Visit to Anthony. During the production, I told my dad that I was making a special cartoon to honor him, and he really looked forward to it. So he started telling all his friends about it. 'Hey Earl, what does your kid do for a living?' 'Yeah, ha, big deal. Well, my kid is in Hollywood making pictures!' So when the cartoon was finished, I got on my private jet from Hollywood and flew up to Ottawa with a videotape of the picture. I didn't show it to him right away though. I waited until we went to the cottage for the weekend. Well, we had a cottage with my dad and had a lot of friends on the lake who had their own cottages. We were eating barbecued burgers and he was staring at my videotape. 'Give me that goddamn thing!' And he grabbed it and tossed me in the canoe. With one furious stroke, he paddled us across the lake to his best friend's cottage, the only one on the lake with electricity. Inside, a bunch of the guys were hanging around drinking beer, playing darts, and telling dirty stories. They said to me, 'Hey Johnny, did you bring that cartoon of your old man?' I shoved it in the VCR and we all sat down to watch it. Dad sat back in his chair beaming until a couple minutes into the cartoon and his face turned to stone. All the guys were laughing and slapping their legs and looking around at him as his face turned purple. They were elbowing him in the ribs and stuff. 'Man, you really nailed him, didn't you, kid?' Dad didn't say anything. In fact, he didn't say anything for days. Then when we went home and I woke up one morning, I sat down at the breakfast table. Dad was there eating his cornflakes. He didn't say anything for minutes. He just gazed at me with steel in his eyes. I was eating my bacon and kielbasa sandwich when finally the ice broke and he said, 'Hey wise guy, I hate your cartoon!' I kinda suspected he didn't like it, that I made him look too much like a harsh disciplinarian. I was about to explain how in cartoons you have to exaggerate and take artistic license to make the stories more entertaining, when he told me what he didn't like about the cartoon. 'You little twerp. You made me look soft! Now my friends think I'm a twerp!' Anthony was originally for Carbuncle Cartoons, but after a, quote, not-so-nice conversation with Jim Ballantyne, they were put to the next episode. May 20th, the Royal Canadian Kilted Yaxman airs. Frustrations due to working with Games Animation forced Carbuncle Cartoons to drop the show. Bob Jakes said, quote, "I really hate it when someone says, 'just do it,' because a film is not directed that way. One of the reasons for the success of the show was that it was looked after every step of the way." John would also express disapproval over the cartoon because he was given co-directing duties with Riccardi, which he threatened legal action over because Riccardi admitted to both him and Jakes that he, quote, did not direct the cartoon. He had no intention of taking a director credit. He was pressured by Jim Ballantine to take the credit, and he would ask to have his name removed. Ballantine said, quote, Chris was in a serious relationship with Lynn Naylor. Anything having to do with Chris made John extra nuts. MTV would air the episode's song, Kilty the Axeman Anthem, uncensored. At this point, the second season of Ren and Stimpy came to a close, and John demanded the created by credit at the beginning of the show be removed. Nick said the third season would premiere in September, but it aired months later. June 1st, 1993, Ren and Stimpy VDITS was released for Super Nintendo. That same month, the first issue of Wild Cartoon Kingdom was released, going in depth on the short history of the show and spotlighting John's other works. An original draft of the article featured a section with the heading Spumco's Bad Apples, and John says the artists who went on to work for games were, quote, complainers who were chronically unhappy no matter where they were working. Will McRobb said, quote, anybody who wasn't on John's side was the enemy, and I was just sort of in the middle. That was my job in general. The last time I heard from John was a voice message on my phone, and what he said to me was, hey Will, there's a word in the dictionary you should look up. I think it's integrity. Future articles in the magazine were written by John himself under a pen name. Also this month, Cinefantastique runs a lengthy article on John as well. At this time, Camp described a writing session at games as, quote, a pitcher of martinis and somebody rolling a big fatty. He also said, quote, once at games I knew I couldn't direct all these cartoons, and anyone who wants to direct, I told to direct. At this time, Lynn Naylor begins working on the show again, working primarily with Riccardi. October 10th, 1993, Red, the Two Stupid Dogs episode airs. John is listed in the credits as contributing, quote, tidbits of poor taste. November 20th, the third season finally premieres with To Salve and Salve Not and A Yard Too Far, both of which were Spumco works in progress. Out of 16 episodes aired during the season, 9 of which started with Spumco. The 26th, Nick airs No Pants Today, which features a talking cow voiced by Mike Pataki, obviously referencing John's character from Mighty Mouse, the cow. November 30th, Billy appeared on Conan O'Brien. This appearance is once again considered a slight to Spumco, as they feel Billy claims he came up with Ren's voice. In December, it's announced via Wild Cartoon Kingdom, NBC contacted Spumco to do bumpers for them. December 12th, Ren's Pecs is aired. John is removed from the writing credits. January 8th, 1994, Stimpy's Cartoon Show is aired. In one scene, Ren is drawn as Chris Felucci. This is also the first appearance of Wilbur H. Cobb, which was a play on John's Raymond Spum idea and one of John's slights against producer Will McRobb. Bill Ray said, quote, he worked well for one cartoon when you first saw Cobb, but Bob felt sorry for Jack Carter, so he would cast him in as many cartoons as possible. So in a way, there were 2 or 3 cartoons where he was just shoehorned in, just so Jack could get some work. In March, in the third Wild Cartoon Kingdom issue, John once again, under an alias, writes a review on Animaniacs. Quote, where does this stuff come from? Who else? Steven Spielberg. And why does this guy put his name on everything? Have you seen the billboards for the dinosaur cartoon? Ugh, give me a break. Pretty soon we'll be seeing billboards that say, coming soon, a bucket of puke from Steven Spielberg, or don't miss the latest dried out bloody nose boogers from the man who gave you E.T. The show is given an overall rating of not even worth 1. At the end of April, only 8 of 13 episodes had aired. Herb Scannell, Senior Vice President of Programming at Nick, said, quote, the thing with the audience of Ren and Stimpy is that they are fans of the show, and there is a certain expectation of repeat patterns, totally contradicting themselves from when John was in charge of the show. June 1st, Fire Dogs was released for the SNES. August 17th, Ren and Stimpy Show Stimpy's Invention was released for the Sega Genesis. August 31st, You Idiots was released. It was a musical album featuring many of the hits thus far, like Happy Happy Joy Joy and Don't Whiz on the Electric Fence. However, everything was re-recorded to avoid paying Chris Felucci. At the same time, Naylor leaves the show again, citing the show's deadlines. September 2nd, Eleanor Blake, under her April March moniker, releases the Voodoo Doll Kooky 45. The liner notes are written by John. September 21st, Nick releases Croco Christmas. October 1st, Time Warp was released. The same day, the Ren and Stimpy Show begins its 4th season. The same year, John hoped to acquire Mighty Mouse's rights from Paramount and have Spumco produce episodes. This fell through, however. Late January 1995, Mary Harrington told Games that the show was to be, quote, ceased indefinitely. June 3rd, Ren and Stimpy begins its 5th season. August 1st, John appears on The Howard Stern Show without Billy knowing until they bump into each other in pure Ren and Stimpy fashion. John's bathroom noises gave him away. The tension in the studio is thick as Billy is unapologetic for his actions and choosing not to stick with John. At one point, John comments on Billy's demeanor and says, somebody was going to have to exterminate the Jews anyway. Might as well been me. That same month, Games finished up production on the series. A series wrap party was held where 2 Ren and Stimpy dolls were tied to rocks in the deep end of a pool. September 19th, Nick releases another Ren and Stimpy music-themed album, Radio Days. October, Cinefantastique prints a lengthy article trying to figure out what went wrong with the show. At one point it states, quote, in 2 years, Nick has succeeded in taking a show that many expected to become heir to the Looney Tunes mantle and turned it into a repetitive mess. October 1995, April March releases her Chick Habit EP. The song would later be used in the movie Death Proof. October 7th, Ren's Brain airs, showing Nick's need to keep using John's old story ideas even this far after they fired him. At this time, money began to stop showing up to John as the Ren and Stimpy Show began wrapping up production. John then filed a $100 million lawsuit against Nickelodeon, and this continued to drain Spumco's finances. At this time, producer Libby Simon had to leave to, quote, get a real job. The basis of the lawsuit claimed that in the original contract, merchandising rights were to revert back to him after 5 years. He also demands an injunction against MTV and compensation. A few months later, it was settled out of court, with those close to John claiming he was paid a couple million to just walk away. December 1st, Spumco's comic book is released by Dark Horse Comics. December 9th, Reverend Jack Cheese airs. The further the cartoon progresses, the more John jokes were thrown in. John said this cartoon was, quote, to make fun of me for making them rich and famous. The idea for Jack Cheese dated back to around the time of the Harlem Shuffle video. During the after party, Bob Jakes, Jim Gomez, and John were all drinking heavily when Bob started grabbing cold cuts from a tray and placing them one by one on John's head. John said nothing the whole time, just dragging on his cigarette, and the pile got higher and higher until Bob stopped from laughing too hard. John just stared and said, "What are ya? I'm sure you waste good meat." December 16th, Nick airs A Scooter for Yaksmas. This will be the last new episode the network will air. In 1996, Bjork's I Miss You video airs. October 20th, MTV airs Sammy and Me and The Last Temptation, thus concluding the Ren and Stimpy show's run. 1997, Spumco launches its website. October 15th, The Goddamn George Liquor Show premieres online. This was the first Flash cartoon series produced for the internet. December 17th, South Park aired their episode, Mr. Hanky the Christmas Pooh. John claimed the show stole the idea from him, which they profusely denied. From the end of '98 into the early next year, Spumco did a number of ads for Old Navy. September 24th, 1999, A Day in the Life of Ranger Smith and Boo Boo Runs Wild aired on Cartoon Network. After handling most of the animation for the piece, Rough Draft dropped out after not wanting to redo scenes for John anymore, and Spumco finished the project. That same year, Spumco released the Weekend Pussy Hunt series on their site. John said, quote, "Weekend Pussy Hunt was a film noir cartoon. We serialized it so that every week there'd be a cliffhanger. Its style was a 1940s live-action film noir movie, and we based one of the characters, Dirty Dog, on one of my favorite movie actors, Robert Ryan. Weekend Pussy Hunt was basically a chase movie, a really dark, hard-boiled thriller. We started off fooling the audience. We wanted them to think it was like a 1940s Warner Brothers cartoon chase cartoon between a dog and a cat. But as we moved on, they got uglier and uglier and uglier. You found out more about who this dog was. He was the king of the underworld animals in the neighborhood. So it becomes this ugly, dark film noir kind of movie." Pussy Hunt had been around for some time, actually having a release date of '97, but being pushed back. The series began airing on Icebox.com, but during episode 13, funding ran out and employees were laid off during Thanksgiving, 4 episodes short of its run. The same year, Spumco was also shopping a pilot to He Hog the Atomic Pig. Around 2000, Spumco was running out of work and was contacted by Cartoon Network to flash animate some shorts for their website. 2 were made, The Best Son and Father and Sunday. Around this time, Fox picked up The Ripping Friends. The show had been around since the Ren and Stimpy days and had been shopped repeatedly. Work on the show proved to be a headache, as out of the 2 animation studios chosen, Red Rover and Funbag, only the first had ever read John's instructions on the show. After 6 months of work, Red Rover did not continue the show. Towards the end of the last couple episodes of the first season, John went to Ottawa to see that his orders hadn't even reached the artists at all and sat on the desk of production manager John Shaw at his own orders. Artist at Funbag, Steve Stefanelli, said, quote, "They almost went at it. John threatened him, said he was going to punch his lights out." John was banned from the studio and had to finish the series on his own from a hotel room. The Ripping Friends aired on Fox Kids, September 22, 2001. The series went on to flop and was not picked up for a second season. Adult Swim soon after started airing reruns. Never one to give up, John's fans were about to be pleasantly surprised.